Rishi Sunak is obliged to call an election by December the 17th next year. That means that at the very latest we could end up with a new parliament in mid-January, which would be an extraordinary time to have an election just after Christmas, with people going door to door, not singing carols, but asking for your vote. And so I think the chances are we will end up with an election at the very latest in autumn. If Rishi Sunak is clever, and if he feels that the bounce is sufficient from the Chancellor's autumn statement, then probably we will end up with an election to coincide with local elections in May. I think that's unlikely. I think Rishi Sunak's undoubted intelligence is being eclipsed by the stupidity of people in his cabinet. We saw an example of that yesterday with James Cleverly's extended vocabulary. He's now managed to say the word shit twice in recent memory. And both times, I understand, is the sort of language of a squaddy, or in his case, a reservist. Not somebody who does real service in the army, but somebody who likes to put on the uniform and parade around. And somebody who otherwise, in his free time, paints miniature war figures. There's a pattern emerging here. And it's rather a shame, because I have taught so many people from I believe, his school. And so again, I think I'm well placed to judge both his accent and the quality of his interjection. But Rishi Sunak needs more than a bounce, which various people have dismissed as a result of the... Jeremy Corbyn dismissed it as a result of the Bank of England. Was it Jeremy Corbyn? May have been somebody else. It isn't. It's a result of the fuel prices, petrol, gas going down. And that's got nothing to do with Rishi Sunak's ingenuity. There is ingenuity going on, an attempt to pass off the rise in migrants coming to our shores by a reference to the drop in the number of boats that they're using. Yes, there is a drop in the number of boats. They're using bigger boats. We still have the problem with migration. And you might think, oh my goodness, I thought you were sort of to the left of the Conservative Party. No, I would see myself as a centrist. I see myself also as somebody without a party. But I consider migration a serious problem. Not so much to us as to the migrants who are being deceived into getting into boats by smugglers. I know all about the migration problem. I've been looking at it for the last 25 years. I first came across it while I was in Greece, and so I also know about the Greek approach, which is called pushback. And they literally push people back into the sea, where sometimes they drown. And if journalists discover, there's a headline, and there's a bit of hand-wringing. But essentially, the Greeks think that that is the way forward. Suella Braverman went off to Greece a while ago to learn from the Greeks. There's nothing you can learn from the Greek Coast Guard. I was involved in taking them to court. And then they became part of Frontex. And yet there was this cloud hanging over them. The cloud of contempt for humanity. Now, in many ways, I think Greece is a remarkable country and a good country. But they've been waylaid. Why? Because Europe has dumped on Greece. What else can Greece do? It's got very few choices. Because of the Dublin III protocol, which we have got out of, Dublin tends to pick up almost all the migrants who come into Europe, because one of the first countries that they hit is Greece. And under the Dublin protocol, migrants should return to the country where they first landed, and that country should process them. It's a completely unfair system. Dublin III needs to be revised. The 1951 Refugee Convention needs to be revised. These two things, we could lead the way in that revision. we could lead the way, but instead Suella Braverman has led the way in wasting valuable parliamentary time, valuable diplomatic time, pursuing an absurd fantasy, what she called a dream, set out by Priti Patel. That's the person who was accused of bullying. She and Burko, by the way, both accused of bullying. And Priti Patel is still in place because Boris Johnson turned a blind eye to whatever the evidence was produced. But there was an inquiry, and the inquiry pointed a finger of blame. Boris Johnson ignored it. So Priti Patel first had the idea about Rwanda, and Suella Braverman took it up eagerly because she has friends in Rwanda as well. But having friends is not enough, and having assurances from friends is not enough, because Rwanda has an appalling record of shooting refugees, not just refoulement, but shooting them. And that was that again was a courtesy done by the Supreme Court, that they didn't emphasize that, but they acknowledged it. It was hidden in the text. Rwanda cannot be trusted to look after our refugees. So we could put up a new treaty. It's simply going to waste more time. It's still just a grand way of getting a promise. And we still have to look at the way they behaved in the past. And they haven't cleared up their mess, because the investigation into that shooting in February 2018 has never been made public. So we can't judge it. We can't make any decisions about it. I think once all these things start to trickle out in the debate of an election, there is little hope that Jeremy Hunt's budget, which, by the way, is spectacularly good. It's one of the best budgets that has been produced by any government. It's not enough. It's not enough. And I'm afraid it's one effort too much, because it's then backed up by the oppression of, again, a vulnerable group in our society, the unemployed, and particularly the disabled unemployed. If you go to your local job centre and you look at the jobs on offer, very few of them are on offer for people working from home. But that is the bland assumption put out by this government. It's wrong. It's wrong. And people try to work. I'm sure they try to work. And I think so much more is achieved by working from what is positive than assuming everything is negative. Assuming everything is negative, all you are doing is throwing more and more people to police the activities that ordinary people do naturally. I've seen this in education, by the way. In the last 20 years, we've gone from a cursory observation of exams and checking exams to exams literally being policed by the equivalent of a store detective, a shop walker, somebody who is out to catch villains. And we've had extraordinary stories of people who've accidentally walked in with their phone. They've had all their exams stopped. People who haven't even consulted their phone, who hand in their phone halfway through the exam. They realise it's in their pocket, and suddenly they're disqualified from all their exams. It is absurd. Instead of all these exams, and of course there's no question we need to toughen up our students so that they can face the reality of work in the workplace, and exams are a part of that, but for the most part we should be trusting teachers and teachers' assessments. And if we can't do that, we shouldn't be employing the teachers. It's such a simple observation. If we don't trust the teachers, get rid of them. Get rid of them, and you have no teachers. We need to start trusting people. And in the same way, uh, we don't when we get into a taxi, we don't monitor where the taxi driver is taking us. We assume that he or she can do the job, don't we? It's the same thing with a teacher. Either we assume they can do the job until there's evidence that they can't, or we get rid of them. And if we have so many teachers that we don't trust in our system, then our system deserves to collapse, doesn't it? Same thing with the NHS. We either trust our doctors and our nurses and the auxiliary staff, or we don't. But we've got an entire swathe of bureaucracy which is there to monitor what's going on, what they're doing. Actually, it's just giving work for bureaucrats. We need to cut the bureaucracy. That will free up money. That will suddenly... You don't hear of the bureaucrats in either schools or in... or in universities, or in hospitals going on strike, do you? It's only the people who are actually doing the work who go on strike, because they're the ones who are badly paid. The bureaucrats are sitting pretty. We need to cut back bureaucracy. That might start, for example, with the House of Commons.